filmmaker is an audience.
Oh, well, there you go. Thank you, audience members, then.
Thank you.
That's a joke I made Friday night as well. I was like, man, I love all of you. Butts and seats. That's the only thing I want to see as a festival coordinator. So also the best gift that I could get too.
Thanks.
So Ned, how did you hear about Ranger's story?
It's a great story. I've been a Mazama since 1979. Did a lot of climbing over the years, and last year in August, I was at a party out in the gorge, and some gentleman named Brendan from California. We were talking about our life experiences and what we do. He says, "Well, you know about Ranger if you're a Mazama, right?" And I said, "Ranger?" I hadn't heard the story. So I called my friend Jeff Thomas, who co-wrote the script with me and acquired all the photographs. They were all black and whites, and I did some colorization. And we wrote a script based on Rick Conrad's chapter in a book about the climbers of the Y East Mountaineers Club, and produced this film in about 90 days.
Wow. And I also just love, I mean, it's a different style of film, and it just goes to show that you don't need film footage. You don't need to go out with a camera in order to be a filmmaker, to make a film. So what was kind of that research process like, looking for those photographs and then compiling the footage and the editing?
Well, the research for getting the photographs was at first pretty easy because the Mazamas have a great library and archive. And then Jeff, who is connected with a lot of the people, he's one of the historians in the club, was able to reach out to people who had some photos in their private collections. And we're able to get those and then scanned them in. I mean, these were, actual photographs, they weren't digital. And then, thank goodness, Photoshop's got a colorized option, did some colorization, left some black and white. And we had written the script that kind of told the story and the first person, which I think is kind of unique, rather than having voice of God talking about it. So
Yeah, I did want to ask about that decision to have Ranger tell his story through, kind of the dog's point of view and
yeah,
everything. So, what was it like writing the script kind of like from Ranger's perspective and everything?
well, Jeff and I went back and forth many times on it. We had started out with a kind of a narrator, voice of God overview, and then we decided, this is really a personal story about Ranger's experience, and so we rewrote the script as if Ranger was telling his life story.
And I mean, I just think it's so cool, and we kind of talked about this in our online Q&A,
Right.
but getting to tell the story of a dog. I mean, I feel like a lot of documentaries and things like that, they're about people, which is great too. But I mean, what creature do really everybody love? A dog.
Yeah.
So, I'm just curious, would you have any thoughts about, like, have you seen other films like that before? Were you inspired by anything?
Well, I had done one other film that's actually one that you picked up that's online, the Ray Tauser, world champion motorcycle racer. We decided, or my son and I did that one, and we decided to tell his story first person. It was the same kind of discovery of a cache of personal photographs. Ray was a world champion motorcycle rider in 1931, and we came across a box, a couple of banker boxes full of photographs and memorabilia and stuff like that. And we just said, let's let Ray tell his story. So we had used this technique before. Um, I haven't seen a lot like that. I mean, you get interviews of, contemporary people where they tell their story, but here these people and the dog are not around anymore. So we decided to, if you will, animate them.
Yeah, absolutely. And I definitely want to get back to Ray Tauscher's story
Okay.
as well and ask about that too, for sure. Um, but when it comes to Ranger, I mean, I just adore this movie. It makes me smile so much. And so you're headed actually next month to the New York City Dog Film Festival.
That's
Can
right.
you tell us a bit about that?
Yeah, believe it or not, there's a woman in New York that runs the New York Dog Film Festival. She also has a New York Cat Film Festival. Different
For everybody.
yeah. And so we're going to fly back I think the 24th of next month to New York, and we'll screen the film in the East Village. And the film, along with other dog films, are going to enter in a rotation through theaters across the country. So it's going to get, play. It'll come to Portland in the Fox Tower. I don't know if it's coming here, but if you look up New York Dog Film Festival, you can find out where he's playing.
Oh my gosh, how
Yeah,
cool is that? And have you been to that film festival before? Do
have
you know?
not.
Yeah.
The thing about doing film festivals is a lot of them just want to get your money, and then you never make it. And so we just said, well, I'll find some film festivals that are, you know, dog centric. So you go to Film Freeway and you say, films about dogs, and you get a couple, and that was one. Same thing with the Ray Tauser film. Search for motorcycle film festivals, and there's not many. Um, and I've submitted the Ray Tauser film, for example, to because it's a real personal story about this guy's life that he tells. And motorcycle racing happens to be, if you will, the MacGuffin that moves him through it. Um, but unless it's a motorcycle film festival, the thing doesn't get picked up. It's amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow, that's so interesting.
Yeah.
You just said a very film word, a MacGuffin. Can
Oh,
you describe what that word means for people?
MacGuffin goes back to Alfred Hitchcock, where it's basically a plot device to move the sequence forward in the film, the narrative moving forward. If you've ever seen, there's a great film with Robert De Niro called Ronin. Anybody seen Ronin? Okay.
Right.
The briefcase. You never find out what's in the briefcase, but there's this chase to get the briefcase. And so the briefcase is the MacGuffin because it advances the plot. And you'll see this used many times in modern film and narratives.
Well, without maybe giving anything away too much in the Ray Tauscher film, how is the motorcycle used as the MacGuffin in that film? And if you want to describe that a little bit.
I think the thing about Ray Tauser is that he was, for a brief period of time, the most, if you will, awarded world champion motorcycle rider, and that is just a part of his life. We talk about his life from when he was born in Portland, up on Burnside, East Burnside, and went to go see motorcycle races, and then started racing and race up and down the West Coast, and then he got tagged by a promoter in the United Kingdom, in the UK, where you get 80,000 people in Wembley Stadium watching motorcycle racers on a dirt track. I mean, and the United States doesn't have that interest in motorcycle racing, but it was a big deal. So he got tagged as America's best to come to England and race. And so again, the idea that Ray and his life story advances through this vehicle of being a motorcycle racer. And, when he was no longer able to race, he crashed and broke bones and finally retired. He started managing tracks and managed a track in Portland. And, then he retired from the industry, but he never really got too far away from it. So, if you will, the motorcycle itself and the racing is used to advance the plot about his life.
Absolutely. Wow. And how did you learn about Ray Tauscher?
Another interesting story. I'm a member of a motorcycle club called the Flying 15 in Portland, and we had a historian by the name of Peter Fritsch, and Peter had started research on Ray Tauser in 2010, I think. Yeah, no, 2000. And he had a banker box full of Xeroxed articles about Ray. And then, unfortunately, Peter had passed away. And my wife and I helped his widow clean up his belongings. And this box of memorabilia from Ray Tauser, my wife put it in her office in 2010. 10 years later, in the middle of the pandemic, she comes downstairs with this box and says, "You might be interested in this." I built a family ancestry tree for Ray Tauser on ancestry.com, found surviving relatives that lived out in Gresham. They had original material, not Xeroxes. They had his scrapbooks, his racing jersey, his banners from championships. and we use all those in the documentary. So, uh, and it just kind of fell onto my lap, and it was a perfect pandemic project in 2010, 2020.
Oh, absolutely. So definitely be sure to check out that on our online path,
Yeah,
our online segment.
it's
So
17 minutes. It's not. It's a little longer than
Ranger,
the Ranger film, but
yeah,
I think you'll enjoy it.
it's 17 minutes and captivating as well.
Yeah,
So there you go.
thank you. Okay.
No, and you just got back from quite the trip on your motorcycle. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Oh, yeah. My wife and I, with two other friends, we just spent 11 days riding 2,400 miles over to Montana and Wisconsin, Montana, and the Beartooth Pass, Dead Indian Pass, if you know that area, just gorgeous. And we only had one morning of rain, so it was perfect weather.
Oh, that's remarkable. So, would you say, I mean, this was our outdoors block of films and everything.
Yeah.
Is motorcycling kind of a way for you to connect with the outdoors?
Yeah. I mean, I used to do a lot of mountaineering, but I'm old and feeble now. So I just twist the grip and go.
That seems like a really nice alternative. There's plenty of times when I'm out mountain biking, and in that the Black People Don't Do That film, some of those trails I've been on and I have seen that jump, and
Yeah.
that was scary.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
I wouldn't do that now.
no, maybe not even on a motorcycle, right?
Probably not.
Definitely not. But what do you think kind of what's the importance of showing these outdoors films and these outdoor stories and sharing something like Ranger's story?
Yeah. I think for me, um, there's some history here about achievements, even though it was by dog, that shouldn't be forgotten. Because Rangers' history and Ray Towser's history and their achievements were lost, forgotten. And so I think this brings it back and it gives you some perspective in history about what happened, before we were born, before we saw all this, that, people had aspirations and it's inspiring. And I think that the inspiring to get out and do things uh, is important. And I think that's what it brings.
So true. And just that connection with nature and what that can do. I mean, we saw in one of the films just how that can help your mental health too as well. And it's just
Yeah.
really beautiful. So what was your kind of background as a filmmaker before this? You mentioned you were a mountaineer. I mean, what kind of led to where you are now?
I didn't become a filmmaker until I retired from the high tech industry in 2011. But I had in my genes, if you will, my grandparents were pioneers in the early motion picture industry. If you Google Thanhauser, as on the thing there, my grandparents had a motion picture studio in 1910 to 1917. They produced over 1,000 silent films that went into worldwide distribution. And I was on a 35-year quest, still working on it, to find surviving films. They didn't save anything. And so my website has got 100 plus films you can look at that I found over, if you will, 30 some odd years, going to archives all over the world, from Australia to the Netherlands to England, George Eastman House over in New York, and the Academy of Motion Picture Sciences, and Library of Congress. So it's been a, if you will, a quest to find and again reconstruct that history, so you can see where the world was back, 1910, 1917. And some of the films are just fantastic. And two of them were on the National Film Registry, which is, this every year the Librarian of Congress um, selects 25 films for preservation. They're significant culturally or significant in that sense. So there's two of the Thanhauser films that are on there.
Gosh, that's so fascinating. We'll definitely have to check that out. What was the your website?
Thanhauser.org.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah.
Awesome, Ned. That's so exciting.
Thank
So
you.
when you say it's in your genes, I'm just curious, when you transferred from the high tech industry into kind of filmmaking in your retirement, were you always kind of a cinephile interested in films
Yeah.
or
Always been interested in film, but I made a 1 hour documentary about the Thanhauser studio when I retired. My son helped me with it, and it was broadcast on Turner Broadcasting Turner Classic Movies showed it. Um, that's another story. Trying to get Turner to do anything is was an achievement. So
No,
yeah, but
absolutely.
so they showed it, and I have what 17 DVDs in production. I get orders all the time for DVDs. Are all online as well. You can go to a paywall and all that. Yeah,
Wow, how cool, Ned.
yeah,
So, do you have any words of advice for any maybe inspiring filmmakers, whether it's documentary or maybe just thinking about it in retirement or a new
yeah.
hobby?
Well, I co-founded a film festival called the International Youth Silent Film Festival that we started in 2010, just about the time I retired, and it was a competition for students 20 and under to make a 3-minute silent film. We provided a number of soundtracks on the website. They could download the soundtracks, and we had different themes: horror, romance, western. That we have a very talented young man who would compose these and then perform them, and we'd record them. And then the filmmakers, you know, use a cell phone. It doesn't take much. Yeah, you don't have to have $10,000 worth of equipment. And so people, and there's a bunch of kids in Bend that made a bunch of films when they were in high school, and we'd have a regional competition for Northwest, and then we have um, two uh, competitions in Australia. We have franchises, if you will, and then there's one in Denver, one in Detroit, and I've kind of long I've retired from the board. I was on the board for 10 years, but the key thing is that we tell all the filmmakers when they're making a film, focus on the story. You don't have to have the best motion graphics, or you don't have to have um, the best cinematography. Focus on the story, a beginning, a middle, and an end. So that you capture your audience. And the films that have won in our competitions are ones that have the best story. And some of them have some fantastic, you know, animation or whatever. We have some that are completely animated that have won. So, but I mean, these are middle school up to high school kids who are doing these. They're just great.
Wow, that's so
There are
impressive.
hundreds of them on YouTube that you can watch.
Oh my gosh. Wow. Well, do you remember any of your favorites from the film
I
festival?
do.
Any of the stories?
Yeah. I'm trying to remember the name of the film. It's about it. It was a well. There's one that was about a animation that was made with computer animation. This high school girl made an animation about a rover on Mars that came to life. It had, I mean, it was like R2D2 coming to life, moving around, and it's looking for companionship, and it's a real touching story, and it's kind of blocky animation like you'd see on Fortnite or something, but it turned out really good.
Yeah.
And the other one is called Shades of Red, which is kind of a murder mystery whodunit, and is very well produced in terms of a story and motion graphics, and it was all done with uh, you know Final Cut. Great.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many resources to use to be able to
Yeah.
make that.
But again, we see kids that they have an assignment. We work with a lot of schools to say, go out and in your school, go get with whoever does media arts. That's our target, and then we give them all of the tools and website stuff, and meet with them and get them to make doing a film for the festival as part of their curriculum. And that was very successful. It's a fan out. You have to have a pyramid, and we use the top of the pyramid was the media people at the schools.
Absolutely. That's so impressive. And earlier today, we watched our K through college films
Yep,
as well as the films that we did in our film camp.
yep.
That was completely free for middle and high schoolers to attend.
Well, you guys should look at the International Youth Silent Film Festival and make a 3-minute film and submit it.
I'm sensing some collaboration going on
Yeah, yeah,
here.
yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because we have international show where we bring the top 3 films from each of our regions together in Portland, and, there's $5,000 in awards that are handed out. So I mean, the winner gets, $1,000 or something.
Wow, that's so impressive.
Yeah, yeah.
Man, so what did you learn from co-founding a film festival?
It's a
Not that
lot
I'm
of work.
asking for
It's a
any
lot of work.
notes.
When we started, we were having kids mail us DVDs. We hadn't been online, but we eventually moved to online submissions and all that. But, and then the technical, um, aspects of presenting the films like you're doing here, which is really well done.
Thanks, man.
Yeah, yeah, you guys are doing a great job on the technical side, getting the
Shout out to
films.
the tech crew. Thanks,
Yeah,
everybody.
great job. You guys are doing great. Um, I don't know what software you're using to manage this, but we went through a couple of different things. I mean, when we were back in the first days, we get DVDs and I'd rip all of the DVDs and then make one DVD that had all the films in order. And we had live organ accompaniment with each of the films. So our musician would be on the organ at the Hollywood Theater, and we give him 5 seconds between films to reset all the stops, and he would do the live accompaniment for each of the films based on whatever soundtrack they chose. But yeah,
That is so impressive.
yeah,
And I mean, with silent films, I feel like that's such an interesting like genre
yeah,
to
yeah. Because that's why we chose that genre because the organ is a great instrument to do accompaniment with, and the kids don't have to worry about dialogue and editing the dialogue and the sound levels and all of that complexity. Just shoot the film, edit it, tell a story.
wow. Honestly, that is some really good advice because sound is half the battle.
It is.
And we have throughout our selection process, we have several people who are more attuned to the sound side of things. So
Yeah.
they'll pick up on things that maybe the person who isn't as used to that. So that's a really clever
Yeah, I
idea.
can say thank goodness for Pond 5. That's where I got the dog barking,
Oh,
the dog howling. Download all that.
yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. What are some of those sound effects that you used, and how did you kind of incorporate that to tell both the story of Ray Tauscher and Ranger?
Well, Ranger's probably the best example. When we have pictures of, the push into the image of the dog, we get the dog barking in the background just so you kind of get another element of what's happening. So, and then there was some ice when he was talking about the crampons. We had a little, sticking of the ice of the crampons. I mean, all this stuff is available on Pond 5. So if you're a filmmaker and you need stuff, go there. I mean, Ray Tauscher, there's a lot of soundtrack of motorcycle music and motorcycle racing. Pond 5. I mean, I'm a big fan of Pond 5.
Wow, that's amazing. And so, Ned, do you have any projects that you're working on currently?
No.
Is that a deliberate
Well,
choice?
actually, I'm compiling footage from our trip to Montana and Wyoming, and I use a little program called Animoto. Anybody know about Animoto?
Heard of it?
All right, so here's a
Yeah,
action.
please.
Go to animoto.com and you upload pictures and video, and you can upload your own music. And they have different templates that have kind of motion graphics all built in. Just upload them and say, pick that template, push play, and it's done. It's so I did that. We did a motorcycle tour in Germany, and I had a bunch of still and video images of us riding on GoPros and stuff. And you know, it took me 2-3 hours, and you're done.
Oh,
So it's animoto.com. It's very
okay.
cool.
Well, yeah, I mean, it would be kind of hard to be working on projects for you right now with all your travels and headed to
Yeah.
NYC and
I'm
screenings.
waiting for something to show up, but
Yeah, wait for inspiration to strike.
yeah,
Awesome.
yeah.
Well, Ned, is there anything else you wanted to say about either of your films before we do a
No,
quick bathroom break?
go watch them.
Okay, definitely be sure to get the online pass if y'all haven't yet. Come talk to us or anything. But let's give one more round of applause for Ned Thanhauser.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. And we'll do a quick bathroom break for about 8 minutes. And then at 3:30, we'll resume our next block. Thank you so much, everybody.
Great. Hey, that's great.